So I love Bob's song about gratitude. You know, we're talking about gratitude this month because, no surprise, it's Thanksgiving month. Makes sense. And a couple of things. Like the song says, sometimes somebody doing something that expresses their gratitude and appreciation is far more effective than just words. And the other thing is, sometimes when we're not feeling very grateful, it's a tough situation to physically do something expressing our gratitude can get the ball rolling. Usually we say you start in mind and, the body will follow. But, Lord, sometimes we got to get the body moving and then the mind and the feelings will follow. Like I told you about last Sunday, the man who was in desperate conditions, and his way out was to start writing thank you notes to people. It was an act of gratitude and appreciation having nothing to do with his situation, but it was an act. So it was what his song says. It was just a very powerful thing to remember. So one of the best gratitude books that I have found in a long time is this one, Think and Grow Rich. Think and Grow Rich. You can get it on Amazon. It's by a woman named Pam Grout. And that is the title, Think and Grow Rich, not Think and Grow Rich. Think and Grow Rich is another classic, but this is Think and Grow Rich. And the subtitle is, it's a 30-day experiment. We can experiment with this, A 30-day experiment in shameless gratitude and unabashed joy. The unabashed joy comes from the shameless gratitude. So this series this month that I'm doing in that theme then is OMG. We're all used to writing OMG quickly when it's usually, oh my God, like something. Sometimes it's when something wonderful happened, and more often than not it's like, oh no, that didn't happen. OMG, but I'm saying, how about oh my gratitude? Oh my gratitude. So last Sunday I talked about how gratitude is a magnet, and it's a magnet for two things, in two ways. It's a magnet for drawing to us, first of all, for recognizing how rich we are. When we start being grateful, we start recognizing all that we really have. And then the other way it is a magnet is literally it draws to us, not stuff, but experiences that really are the foundation of our gratitude. Stuff does not really make us happy for very long, but an attitude of gratitude is a magnet for experiences that reflect that, experiences for which to be grateful. So the takeaway last week for you, it was your assignment, was to simply start thanking everything right now. Just start thanking everything. And then this week, we're going to take that up a notch and add thank everything no matter what. No matter what. Ouch, that can be tough. So let's talk about how to do that. I've got 3 suggestions, and they come from the book. One of them is shake your pom-poms. The second one is insist on the gifts. And the third one is look up. So shake your pom-poms. That's what I got from Pam Grout, the author. She says, here's how she says it. Shake your pom-poms at dang near everything. That's saying thank you for almost everything, but in her style. So anybody here ever been a cheerleader? Aha. Okay, pom-poms are no stranger to you then, are they, Cindy? Picture yourself with a couple of those pom-poms like cheerleaders have, waving those, shaking those. Just think about that, the visual and the feeling that it would give you, besides feeling silly, but no one has to see you doing this. But shake your pom-poms at dang near everything, she says. And another way to do that is to, when whatever's come up for you, just say, wow, wow. When you're faced with something that you think is not remotely worthy of being grateful, do it anyway. Just try it, no matter what. Whatever or whomever comes your way, let your immediate response be to shake those pom-poms and, in your mind at least, say, wow, thank you. Don't analyze it, just be amazed. Now, this is quite a mind shift for a lot of us, I know, for me too. But it works. It's really powerful. In the book, she says it's about less thinking and more thanking. Just let that become a spontaneous response. Say thank you and then figure it out later instead of figuring it out. No, I'm not going to say thank you for that. Now, there are two reasons for having this response to no matter what, this attitude of gratitude of wow, thank you. One is because that simple response will change your experience of whatever is in front of you. It will change it, and it'll change it beautifully. Maybe not dramatically, and maybe not all of a sudden, but it will change it. Like last week's talk, when the man wrote the thank you notes every day for a year, and it started to change his whole life. And the second reason to do this is because it changes your frequency in the world. She says in the book, Change Your Frequency, Change Your World. Do not underestimate the power of your thought, your energy field, what you're putting out there. This is a reminder again of what we talk about here so often. Because sometimes we think, well, is it all about me, and I don't know, maybe I should be setting aside my gratitude and be worrying about the problems of the world. Well, here's the thing. One of the best things we can do is have that consciousness, that vibe, that attitude of gratitude and appreciation, because it opens and expands us, and it lifts the vibration of the whole planet ultimately. At every moment, whether or not you know it, you are contributing to the collective consciousness. There's only one mind. Carl Jung talked about the one mind, the collective subconscious. There's only one mind. And so it's a ripple effect. Just remember that. So when you're saying, oh, yeah, I'm supposed to be grateful, and I don't know, I suppose it's a nice thing. Oh, it's a cosmic necessity. That's what Eric Butterworth says. It's not just a nice thing. It's a cosmic necessity. So in science, again, it proves time and again, and physics have done studies and shown that your thoughts, your energy field, your vibe, the frequency that you put out is either contributing to the collective despair and the collective story of lack and limitation that all human beings that we sort of subconsciously agree to, or it's contributing to a new story of shameless gratitude and unabashed joy and all of the beautiful things that go with that. So you can change the world. You can change the world by upgrading your vibration to one of gratitude. Now, a little sidebar here, because I understand that we're saying the end game is be grateful no matter what. But maybe you just can't say thank you for whatever's in front of you. I mean, it's just too in your face for whatever reason. So, an interim step would be to find just something for which to be grateful. It can be totally unrelated, but just find something. Maybe add to that some little action, again, referring to last week's story about the man who wrote all the thank you notes. We can do that, and that will bring us around. It will open us up then to be grateful for what is in front of us. Full disclosure here, I can tell you from personal experience many, many times that I'm not always ready to shake my pom-poms and say, wow, thank you. Might take a few dozen shakes of the pom-poms. Might take a few days of shaking those pom-poms for all it's worth and trying and working at it. But I can tell you it makes a difference. It really does. I had something happen a couple of weeks ago, and I was working with this material, and I thought, okay, Karen, you got to practice what you preach. And for just a moment, I actually shifted my thoughts to thank you for something that had happened that was not making me very happy. And for just that moment, I saw possibilities. I saw it in a different way. I wasn't just, oh, this is terrible. It works. It works. It's a marvelous tool. All right, so shake your pom-poms. That's the first thing. Second thing is insist on the gifts, because they're always there. You're looking at some dire situation in front of you, or some very difficult person, or our system, and you're saying, this is not good. There's no way this is good. But when we start giving thanks, there are gifts. Now, a lot of you have heard me talk about Emma Curtis Hopkins, who was a contemporary of Ernest Holmes. Just the most amazing woman, a professor, a beautiful, brilliant, just a genius of a woman, and also a spiritual mystic. What a combination. And she had attitude. She had attitude, especially when she said this, which we've quoted before, and I think some of you may know this, but I invite you to remember it again. When there was something in front of her that was not looking so good, she would just probably put her hand on her hip and say, "This too is good. This too is God. This too is for me. And I demand to see the blessing in it." I demand, not I'm hoping there's a blessing or I'm looking around the corner. I demand to see the blessing in it. That was her faith, because she knew they're there. It's just that we get so blindsided because everything's right in front of us and it's hard to see. Let me remind you in that same theme then that everything happens for us. Nothing happens to us. It always happens for us. And one of my favorite authors for expressing this is a man named Wallace Wattles, who was, again, probably a contemporary of Holmes, and he wrote a lot of books on abundance, of all things. But in that is tucked in, because to have an abundant life, we have to have gratitude, an attitude of appreciation, and because what we appreciate appreciates. So here's what he said: because all things have contributed to your advancement, and there's a little caveat here, says, to your soul's advancement, not your ego's advancement. So, because all things have contributed to your soul's advancement, you should include all things in your gratitude. And here's the real kicker. He also says, because all people have contributed to your soul's, not your ego, to your soul's advancement, you should include all people in your gratitude. Wow. That pretty much, no wiggle room there, is there? Everything and everyone happens for us, not to us. And when we remember that, then we can get grateful, because I know it's happening for me. I can't quite see how yet, but if it is for my good, for my soul's advancement, I'm grateful. Someone said most people don't know that there are angels whose only job is to make sure you don't get too comfortable and fall asleep and miss your life. Do you know any of those? So Pam Grout in her book has a suggestion. She has a whole bunch of suggestions. She calls them party games. But she says, say something really bad happens to you. In your estimation, it's bad. Could be financial, could be health, could be relationships. So she says, this bad thing happens. And she said, probably your standard operating procedure, your SOP, would be to panic, to call all your friends, to report a multitude of horrible endings to this whatever has happened. Been there? Oh, I can do that in a heartbeat. And then when we do that, of course, we pump energy into the utter awfulness of the situation. Energy, you hear me? So it really whomps it up, and not good, but we do that. So here's the game. She says, you may not be ready to shake your pom-poms in the face of whatever this thing is that has happened. So how about this? Push the pause button. Push the pause button and let that thing sit for 3 days. 3 days, knowing that when that time is up, you can then throw the world's biggest pity party. You can go into high drama, whatever you want, if you need to. And you may not need to. Chances are you won't need to. But give yourself a pause for 3 days. And she says, now, what are you going to do during those 3 days? In those 72 hours, come up with 3 possible endings to your story that could potentially make your life better. instead of all the going down the rabbit hole for all the bad possibilities and the ain't it awfuls, take those 3 days to come up with at least 3, and you could maybe come up with more possible endings. Remember, this is not contingent on anything, just possible endings that could make your life better. And that's a pretty good way to kind of step back and not be consumed by whatever's in front of us. But see, when we're starting to contemplate possibilities, gratitude starts to well up. Say, oh, I'm feeling grateful. That's a possibility. She says, put energy into that big array of possibilities rather than on the things that your worst case scenario wants to promote. And something shifts. It's like saying thank you in advance, thanking you in advance. I haven't got a clue how this is going to play out, but I know there are so many possibilities. And I've tried this. I've done this, and it's a very interesting. There's a part of me that wants to pout and doesn't want to look at possibilities, what might be some really good outcomes. But when I yank myself out of that spot and say, hey, well, what if? It's amazing. It makes a difference. And gifts and blessings start to be revealed. As Pam Grout says, and I mentioned this last week too, when we do this, when we start opening up in gratitude in these different ways that we can, it opens a portal straight into the heart of the very field of infinite possibilities. Infinite possibilities that means those that are on the invisible side of life, the ones that you can't see yet. Remember, I walk by faith, not by sight. And so when we start thanking you in advance, I'm grateful there are possibilities. I don't know what's for sure, but I know there are possibilities. It opens us up to all that is on the invisible side of life. God, Spirit, the infinite possibilities. Dr. Ernest Holmes, the architect of our philosophy, put it this way. He said many things about it, but I like this very brief and concise. He says, gratitude is the power which attracts the hidden potentialities of life. Gratitude attracts the hidden potentialities. And I think that's where we get sidetracked. We forget they're hidden, at least for the moment. So, what are some of the blessings that you might be insisting on, demanding? I demand to see the blessing in it. Well, pay attention, because it might be some things like, for example, the situation is maybe forcing you to have a greater trust in the invisible. When everything is humming along, we tend not to need to depend on that which is infinite and endless and powerful and always supporting us, and we kind of forget what an incredible support we have. Source of everything. And so when we're in the clinch, one of the gifts is it forces us, I'm going to say invites us, to experience and trust that in a deeper way. Another thing, ask yourself, is the situation that I'm stuck in, or this person, or this, whatever this is that's in my face, and I'm having trouble being grateful for, but the blessing might be, is it compelling me to try some new things? Is it getting me out of my rut? Is it compelling me to do some things try some things I otherwise wouldn't bother to try? This whole universe is about new. It's about creativity. It's about rearranging. It's about repurposing resources. It's all there, but we get in our little contented rut. We may not be trying all the wonderful new things that are all about life. So maybe this situation is finally pushing me to try some new things. Maybe it is stimulating my creativity in new ways. Build a better mousetrap. I mean, have you ever been, you've got something you have to figure out, and unless you had to figure it out, you wouldn't have known you had the creativity to figure it out, to come up with a solution. These kinds of situations stimulate that within us. Again, it's about more aliveness. When faced with a problem, that's just the universe's invitation to pull out of us more life, more creativity. And the opposite of that, of course, is stagnation and death. So I vote for life, even if it's kind of prickly at times. And then ask, is it drawing me into contact with new people? Often a difficult situation will push us into a corner, and we are, but in the gift is we're drawn to meet different people, to seek out different people, or to seek out people in a different way, to relate to people in a different way. And relationships are our teachers. They're our teachers. So what a marvelous gift. And again, we might get into what we're accustomed to and not realize there's some wonderful new connections, new interactions that stimulate something more in us. So those are just some of the gifts, some of the blessings to insist on when we're in the middle of, I don't know how I can be thankful. You can, because there's much there. There's a fable I love to refer to because it illustrates this so perfectly. It's about in the beginning of time there were birds, but they didn't have any wings, and so they were walking around on the ground. And life finally laid down some wings for them, but laid them in front of them, and said, "Lift them up and carry them." And the birds are thinking, well, why in the world would we want to pick these things up and drag them around? We have enough challenges just to survive. But finally, they picked them up. They, as the fable goes, and they started carrying them. And they carried them on their shoulders a little farther and a little farther. And as they did, they complained a little less and a little less, until in time those attached to their shoulders. Well, one day there was a big, wild north wind that blew through their valley, and the birds were worrying about the strength of the wind versus their frail little bodies. And when unexpectedly that strong wind lifted them up off their little feet, and instantly their wings extended, and of course they went soaring through the sky. And that's when they understood that the weight they had grumbled about was actually the wings that enabled them to soar. And that is the point. Is there something in your life that feels like such a weight, that feels like it's more of a burden, doesn't feel at all like wings, but realize that inside of that and in the process of that, as you take each step, you're going to find that is actually going to be the thing that enables you to be stronger and to actually soar. So the third thing is, and speaking of soaring, the third way to be thankful no matter what is look up. Look up. So we talk often about having a higher consciousness here, have a higher, bigger idea, and that certainly is one way to look up. We've talked about this many times. Where's your attention? Is your attention on the issue, or is it on the higher idea, on the higher possibility, beyond the appearance? Now, that is one way to look up. But I also have heard about and tried a physical tool that is very interestingly helpful, rather subtle. But one of my colleagues, I was watching her on YouTube actually, Kathy Ann Lewis up in Seattle, has a big center up there, and she suggested this. So I'm going to suggest this to you if you're game for this. If you have something that's bothering you, that feels like a burden, you're having difficulty being grateful for, or a person, get that in mind, and then look down at a downward angle about at your knees for a little bit. And you can try this at home too. About a 45-degree angle down. And of course, the situation feels kind of down. Now turn your gaze upward about 45 degrees, not looking at the ceiling, but just maybe 45 degrees up. And notice there's a little shift. And I've done this and practiced with it. And it's very interesting. I will lift up mine eyes unto the hills, the biblical passage. All the spiritual masters have said that in various ways. I will lift mine eyes up. Try that when you're feeling so bogged down and so heavy with, I can't give thanks It's a no matter what situation. Try looking up. I remember when Erwin and I used to, my husband, who is now gone out, he passed away a few years ago. We used to jog, and we did it in Atlanta, and we'd have these hills that we'd have to go up. And, of course, down on the other side, that was the reward. But going up these hills, it would seem so hard. But when I would look up at the horizon, it was 10 times easier just looking up. So there's something to that. It's a visceral thing. You know, our mind and body and emotions and all of it is connected. So look up in whatever way works for you. Look up with a higher idea of possibility. Just physically look up. And when you do that, say very slowly, wow, OMG, or oh my gratitude. And that, my dears, is how you and I can learn to give thanks for everything, no matter what. And I'm going to close with saying that is having an altitude of gratitude. And Bob's going to anchor it by singing a song that's close to that, Attitude of Gratitude. Namaste.